She only spoke once. Quiet, calm, but clear. She said what no one else dared to about the pastor. The next morning, her family was gone. In the church basement, 10 chairs formed a circle. A coffee pot clicked. Naomi Ellis stood with a single page in her hand. "Something is wrong here," she said. "Cash envelopes don't match the youth fund receipts. Private meetings after choir should stop. No names, no yelling, just a steady voice." The pastor smiled thinly. "We'll pray," he said. An usher gathered papers. Someone muted the mic. A deacon reached for the camcorder and closed the lens. The room went still. Naomi folded her page and left with her husband Marcus and their daughter Lila. They walked home under the streetlight. Before sunrise, Mrs. Dunn next door saw their porch light still on. The front door stood ajar. Inside, 2 cereal bowls were set, milk untouched. Keys hung on the hook. Lila's backpack sat by the couch. No note, no phones. Their SUV was in the driveway, windows beaded with dew. Mrs. Dunn called Naomi's sister and waited on the steps, watching the open door breathe warm air into the quiet street. Kenya arrived with a spare key and a list in her head. Call, check rooms, photograph everything. The house was neat, not packed. Beds made. Toothbrushes in place. Naomi's planner lay open on the table. The basement meeting was circled. In the margin, a line. Ask for ledger copy. The ledger was not here. A church handout sat under the planner with a fresh crease. Kenya bagged it, then tried Naomi's phone again, ringing somewhere she could not place. Then silence. She drove to the church. The custodian mopped the hall outside the basement. A paper sign said, "Emergency Maintenance." The camcorder on the wall showed a black screen. In the AV closet, a network cable dangled loose. "It failed last night," the custodian said, not meeting her eyes. Kenya asked for the meeting minutes. "Nothing to file," he said. On the sign-in sheet, a name stood by audio booth. R. Hale. Outside, near the lot, Kenya spotted a thin gold bracelet caught under a bush. Naomi's. She photographed it, left it in place, and dialed the police. The line rang. 2 patrol officers walked the Ellis porch and entered with gloves. No forced entry. No packed bags. Wallets in the drawer. Lila's homework on the coffee table with a half-finished math sheet. Kenya gave a quick timeline and handed over the bracelet photo, the planner note about the ledger, and the church handout. The senior officer nodded. "Minor in the household. We treat this urgent." He radioed a bolo and asked for nearby cameras. Kenya pointed to the church, the corner store, and the clinic across the street. Mrs. Dunn added her statement about the porch light and the open door before sunrise. Kenya drove back to the church with 1 officer. In the lot, a dark stain near the loading door and a fresh scrape on the curb. The custodian said a van was used for outreach after choir. He had no sign-out sheet. Kenya asked for the van keys. The board kept them in a lockbox. The box hung open with 1 slot empty. On the basement cart sat a clipboard for event receipts. The last line ended mid-number. The ledger was still gone. Across from the church sat a credit union with clear exterior cameras. The manager listened, checked policy, and let the officer view the overnight feed. 1 clip showed the church van at the loading door before dawn. Lights off, a blanket over the rear windows. The van rolled slow past the front steps and turned toward Naomi's street. 2 minutes later, it returned from that direction, then headed for County Road. Behind it, a silver sedan followed at a distance. The officer froze a frame and pulled a partial plate. The manager signed a copy to the case. Kenya called the number on the sign-in sheet. R. Hale answered on the 3rd ring. Audio tech. He said he left early and knew nothing about a ledger. Kenya asked about the network cable in the AV closet. He said it fell. The officer requested Hale come to the station. Kenya forwarded the clip of the van and the plate to the detective line and texted Naomi's neighbors to check doorbells and garage cams. Detective Mira Alvarez took the credit union clip, the bracelet photo, and the church handout from Kenya, then walked the basement with the custodian. The emergency maintenance sign still hung. The AV closet cable was unplugged and coiled on a chair. On a supply cart, the receipt clipboard ended mid-number. The pen line trailed off like someone lifted the page. In the office, the treasurer said the pastor kept the youth ledgers for review. A safe sat open with a clean rectangle in the dust where a binder had rested. The key box on the wall showed one van slot empty. The tag flipped backward. Alvarez photographed it and asked for outreach routes. The custodian mumbled, "Annex on County Road." At home, Kenya checked doorbells. One camera showed the church van pause at the Ellis curb before dawn. Rear windows dark, 2 silhouettes at the porch, then the door closing on its own. Another clip showed a silver sedan idling 2 houses down, lights off, then tailing the van toward County Road. Alvarez pulled a partial plate to Deacon Owen Pike. They reached the County Road annex behind a chain fence. The church van sat inside with the hood warm. Rear windows wore tape residue in a rectangle, as if blankets had been fixed over glass. In back lay a folded tarp, a strip of gray duct tape, and a youth program sticker half peeled from a storage bin. The air smelled of cleaner. Alvarez called for a warrant on the annex and office. While they waited, a utility cam feed from the annex office showed the van arrive before dawn and a silver sedan pull in behind it. A man in a suit vest carried a binder to a metal cabinet. Inside the cabinet now, loose deposit slips, 3 pages torn from a ledger, and a thumb drive. In the shred bin sat confetti with "Youth Fund" visible on one strip. Alvarez bagged everything. Kenya lifted the binder dividers and found a folded note in Naomi's hand. "Ledger copy. Ask treasurer." Alvarez looked up. "We go to the pastor's study next." Alvarez served the warrant at the church office. 2 board members and the secretary stood by. The pastor was away on retreat. The study door was locked. The custodian opened it with a master. Inside, the room was neat. On the desk, a calendar listed choir aftercare and youth fund review. A drawer held pledge envelopes banded by week. Several numbers skipped in the youth stack. In the credenza, a small safe sat open with a clean dust rectangle where a binder should have been. Alvarez photographed the void, then checked the lectern base in the basement. The recorder bay was empty, its mount screws bright, the network lead cleanly clipped. Back upstairs, a wall keyboard showed a duplicate van tag turned backward. A sign-out sheet in a tray listed Van 1 beside O. Pike. The secretary said the treasurer had moved some ledgers to the annex for audit. Alvarez bagged the envelopes, the sign-out sheet, and a spare key marked Annex South. She asked for the pastor's contact. The secretary dialed. Voicemail. Kenya looked at the calendar again. "Aftercare," she said. "Who was in those rooms?" At the station, R. Hale arrived with his badge lanyard and a small tool bag. Alvarez recorded the interview. Hale said he ran audio and camera in the basement until an usher waved him down. "Deacon Pike told me to mute the board and pull the network," he said. Said the feed was buzzing. He pointed to a text on his phone from a number saved as O. Pike, "Kill network, close cam, bring card to office." Hale said he removed the SD card from the camcorder and left it on the pastor's desk with a binder already there. On his way out, he saw the van key slot open and the tag flipped. He also saw a silver sedan idling by the loading door, lights off. "Same car Deacon Pike drives," he said. Alvarez copied the texts, noted the times, and kept Hale's phone for imaging with consent. She asked if anyone mentioned a youth ledger. Treasurer said the pastor kept it close. Hale answered. Said copies made people talk. Alvarez ended the interview and called for Pike. Alvarez put out a locate on Deacon Owen Pike and drove with Kenya to his address. His silver sedan sat in the driveway, hood warm. A church sticker clung to the rear glass. A folded blanket lay on the back seat. Pike opened the door in a vest and tie and asked if he was under arrest. "We need to talk," Alvarez said, and read him his rights. He asked for a lawyer, but consented to a quick walkthrough of the car while counsel was called. In the trunk lay bungee cords, a cut strip of gray duct tape, a youth program handout, and a fuel receipt from a station near Riverbend Retreat Center. In the door pocket, a laminated gate pass read, "Annex, Van 1." On the visor, a printed map showed the retreat entrance and a circle around Cabin B. Alvarez photographed each item and sealed the sedan for tow. She asked Pike about the basement camera card. He looked past her. "The pastor handles records," he said. "We don't keep ledgers here." A neighbor called from next door. Pike had left before sunrise with a binder. Alvarez radioed for a retreat warrant. County units met them at Riverbend's gate. The grounds manager tried to stall with privacy rules. Alvarez held up the warrant. In the office log, a van plate matched the church van. The entry line noted a pre-dawn delivery to Cabin B. A path cam showed the van's shape through trees and a sedan behind it with lights off. They followed the path to the cabin. The door was locked from the outside with a new hasp. Fresh screws shone. A window was taped along the frame, adhesive residue still tacky. Inside, a low fan hummed. Alvarez called out. No answer. She cut the hasp. In the main room sat 3 cots, a water jug, and a trash bag with tape cores. On the table lay a bracelet twin to the one Kenya photographed in the bush, and Lila's school folder with a math sheet. Behind a wardrobe panel they found a closet with a rolled tarp and a box labeled Offerings. It was empty. In the far corner, a second door waited, bolted. From behind it came a single knock. Alvarez put her ear to the door. "Police, if you can answer, knock twice." 2 knocks came back, weak but clear. She cut the bolt. Inside was a small storage room. Naomi sat on the floor with her wrists taped. Marcus slumped against a cot, zip ties cut part way. Lila lay under a blanket, blinking, a damp cloth beside her. A box fan hummed in the corner. A water jug and 3 paper cups sat on a crate. On the table lay tape cores, a youth handout, and a folded page torn from a ledger. The rows skipped around cash entries labeled Youth. Kenya knelt with a jacket for Lila and eased the tape from Naomi's wrists. Alvarez called medics and secured the room. Naomi's voice was hoarse. They said it was a cooling off. No phones, no talking. Pike drove. The pastor would handle mistakes by noon. Alvarez photographed the ledger fragment and the blanket edges with tape residue. In a corner bin lay an envelope marked Offerings with a smear of cleaner across the flap. Alvarez bagged it and logged the time. Medics moved the family to a van for transport. Alvarez cleared the cabin and walked the path to the main lodge. The gate log showed a clergy reservation the night before under the pastor's name, Cabin A. A path camera clip showed a man in a dark suit carrying a binder from Cabin A toward the lot before dawn. At Cabin A, the manager opened the door. Inside, a small safe sat in the closet. The warrant covered it. Alvarez opened it with the manager's code. Inside lay a binder labeled Youth Fund, a sealed SD card sleeve from the basement cam, and deposit slips banded by week. Several weeks skipped. A handwritten note read, Audit at Annex. Alvarez bagged everything, then called the station. Hold Pike. Issue a locate on the pastor. Seize church accounts and the Annex network. She returned to Naomi. You are safe. We have a ledger, an SD card, and logs from this site. Naomi nodded. Steady now. The records will tell it, she said. Kenya squeezed her hand. We will too. At the lab, Alvarez logged the SD card and watched the file with a tech. The basement circle came up first. Naomi read from a single page. The pastor said, We'll pray. An usher lifted a hand toward the booth. The audio meters fell. The lens went black. A later clip showed the loading door. The church van idled. A man in a vest, Pike, taped a blanket over the rear glass. Another carried a binder toward the office. The binder's spine matched the one seized at Cabin A. Alvarez noted frame hashes and sealed a copy. She re-interviewed the treasurer. He said the pastor kept youth ledgers close, moved binders to the annex, and used the phrase "cooling off" for disruptions. He forwarded emails with subject lines "Annex Audit" and "Aftercare Headcount." Deposit slips showed gaps. Cash tallies fell on weeks when youth offerings rose. Transfers hit an entity called Community Growth LLC. County records put the LLC under a relative of the pastor. Alvarez drafted a financial warrant and called the DA. Kenya sat with Naomi, who pointed to the ledger tear and said, "That's my note." A search at the parsonage found a suitcase missing, a desk drawer with a storage key tag, and a rental receipt under the church name. The facility manager confirmed recent entries by the pastor and printed gate logs. Alvarez served the unit with a warrant. Inside were offering envelopes banded by week, duplicate sign-in sheets, 2-pocket recorders, spare hasps and screws, folded blankets, duct tape, youth banners, and cash count sheets with hand edits. A metal box held gate cards, Annex South, Riverbend, and a spare Van 1 tag. A small shredder sat over confetti marked Youth Fund. On a shelf, a laptop hummed in sleep. Forensics bagged it. Patrol pinged the pastor's phone near the same lot. Minutes later, he rolled up in an unmarked sedan. Alvarez stepped out. "Police, hands visible." He said, "Church discipline. They signed consent." Alvarez kept her voice flat. "They were detained, off-site, with tape." Cuffs clicked. The DA took the call. Kenya texted Naomi, "We found the unit and the keys. The chain held. The family was safe. The record would carry it." At the station, the pastor asked for a lawyer and stopped talking. Alvarez moved the case on paper. The storage unit haul was logged, offering envelopes by week, duplicate sign-in sheets, spare hasps, blankets, duct tape, pocket recorders, gate cards, and a spare Van 1 tag. Forensics imaged the laptop. A spreadsheet labeled Youth Fund matched the torn ledger page, with cells that hid transfers to Community Growth LLC. Bank records under warrant showed cash drops from offerings into the LLC, then payments on a private mortgage. Riverbend logs tied the church plate to Cabin A and B. The basement SD card showed the network pulled and the lens closed. Hale's texts put Pike at the booth. The treasurer's emails used the phrase "cooling off." Alvarez filed counts: unlawful restraint, kidnapping, tampering with records, theft by deception, and money laundering. The DA asked for no bail on the pastor and Pike. A victim advocate met Naomi's family. Phones were replaced. A protective order barred contact by board members. An emergency hearing set no bail for the pastor and a hold for Pike. The court froze church accounts tied to the ledger and issued a monitor. The board's secretary turned over minutes and stepped down. The treasurer agreed to cooperate and returned a binder from home. Hale kept his consent to image the phone. Kenya signed the property receipt for Naomi's bracelet and Lila's folder from Cabin B. Alvarez sent preservation letters to Riverbend and the Annex Network. A grand jury date was set. The church announced an outside audit. Some members left envelopes at the station, saying they did not see youth funds reach the program. Others sent notes for the family. At home, new locks were set. A quiet address was arranged for a time. Naomi read the fragment again and closed the binder. "We keep the pages in order," she said. Marcus nodded. Lila held the folder. The case would take time. The record would carry it. They stayed together that night. The grand jury convened. The DA put the storage unit haul on a table, offering envelopes by week, duplicate sign-in sheets, pocket recorders, spare hasps, gate cards, and the spare Van 1 tag. The basement SD card played, audio meters drop, lens closes, van at the loading door, blanket taped. Riverbend logs tied the van plate to cabin A and B. The binder from cabin A matched the torn ledger page. Bank records showed transfers from Youth Cash to Community Growth LLC, then payments on a private mortgage. The treasurer agreed to cooperate and identified his emails about annex audit and aftercare headcount. Hale's texts put Pike at the booth with orders to pull the feed. The judge kept no bail for the pastor and continued the hold for Pike. A monitor froze youth accounts. The board secretary resigned. Kenya signed a copy request for Lila's folder. Naomi gave a brief statement with an advocate present. Simple facts. No reach. The record carried the weight. Policy moved with the case. The church accepted an outside audit. Youth funds went to a monitored escrow. 2 board members stepped down. The retreat added a rule. No locked cabins, no off-site cooling off. Guests must have phones. The annex tightened access logs. Riverbend preserved path cams. The city posted guidance for mandatory reporting. Alvarez filed preservation letters for every system that touched the route. At home, locks were changed and a quiet address set for a while. Lila went back to school with a counselor note. Naomi met with the advocate and set a plan for court dates. She did not speak at the next church meeting. The microphone stayed open, and the recording stayed on. Alvarez walked the binder to evidence and signed the seal. Pages in order. Names on each line. The case would take time. Tonight they stayed together. The rest would move on paper. Pretrial moved fast. The DA offered Pike a deal if he testified about the van, the blankets, and who ordered the feed cut. He asked for counsel and sat quiet. The treasurer signed a cooperation letter and returned a second binder from home. Youth envelopes banded, several weeks missing. Hand edits that matched the spreadsheet on the seized laptop. Forensics pulled emails with the subject, "Cooling Off Protocol," drafted by the pastor, with talking points about voluntary reflection off-site. The storage unit's pocket recorders held short clips, door knocks, a chair scrape, a voice saying, "No phones." Riverbend's path cams were preserved and mapped to the gate log. The board appointed an interim committee and released a note that youth ledgers would be copied to the monitor and families could review entries. Alvarez met Naomi at the station to preview her statement. Calm lines, no reach, dates tied to paper. Kenya drove them home after. The door shut. New locks held. The binder stayed sealed in evidence. The court set dates and barred any contact with the family. The pastor stayed on no bail. Pike moved to a hearing on cooperation. Hale kept consent to image his phone and sat for a second interview. His texts matched sign-out sheets and gate times. The church posted new rules. Cameras may not be muted during meetings. Any off-site use of vans requires a public log. Ledgers are duplicated weekly. Riverbend banned locked cabins and made guest phones mandatory. At home, routine returned in small pieces. Lila did homework at the table. Naomi saw the advocate and set appointments. Marcus changed the porch light and checked the windows. On Sunday, the microphone stayed on, the recorder light steady. No one used the phrase, "cooling off." Alvarez walked a fresh copy set to the DA and signed the seal. Pages in order, names on each line. The case would keep moving on paper. Tonight, the family slept in their own house. The door stayed closed. The street was quiet. State charity auditors joined the case. The DA filed forfeiture on the LLC accounts that received youth cash. A court order created a monitored escrow for restitution. The interim board voted to copy every youth entry for families. Alvarez walked a fresh binder set to the auditors and signed the seal. Forensics matched the pastor's laptop sheet to the torn page from cabin B. Cell formulas hid transfers under harmless labels. Hale gave a short statement. He muted the board on Pike's instruction and delivered the camera card to the pastor's desk. Pike's counsel asked for a meeting. He offered route details to Riverbend and admitted taping blankets over the van glass. The court extended the order barring contact with the family. Sunday came. Naomi did not speak. The mic light stayed green from the first song to the last. After service, a mother squeezed Naomi's hand and said, "My son asked where the money went. We will look." Naomi nodded. Pages in order. Names on each line. Defense moved to suppress the storage unit evidence and the basement SD card. The court found the unit search within the warrant and the card properly logged from the cam. Riverbend logs and path cams stood on business records. The judge set dates and continued no bail for the pastor. Pike entered cooperation talks and turned over his gate cards. The treasurer brought a final binder and identified weeks with cash gaps. Alvarez filed a simple timeline. Meeting in the basement, feed cut, van sign-out, annex stop, retreat cabins, storage unit. Each stop had paper, video, or a witness. At home, Lila returned to choir with a counselor present. Marcus checked the porch and set a new sensor. Naomi met the advocate and planned a brief statement. She would keep to facts, no reach. The church posted new rules. Cameras stay on, vans log routes publicly, ledgers duplicate weekly. The street was quiet. The binder stayed sealed in evidence. The case moved forward on paper. A jury was seated. The DA opened in plain steps. A meeting in the basement, a feed cut, a van signed out, an annex stop, locked cabins at the retreat, and a storage unit with church property. The SD card played. Naomi speaks, an usher signals, meters fall, the lens goes black. The next clip shows the van at the loading door, a blanket taped over the rear glass. Riverbend logs and path cams tie the van and a silver sedan to cabins A and B. The binder from cabin A matches the torn page from cabin B. Bank records show youth cash moved to Community Growth LLC and then into a private mortgage. Hale testified. He said Pike told him to mute the board and pull the card, then deliver it to the pastor's desk. He saw the van key slot open and a silver sedan idling by the loading door. The treasurer testified that the pastor kept youth ledgers close, moved binders to the annex, and used cooling off for disruptions. The court admitted the storage unit haul and the SD card. The record stood on paper, video, and people. Pike met with counsel and entered a plea to lesser counts. He gave the route to the annex and Riverbend, admitted taping blankets over the van glass, and said the pastor ordered the feed cut and cooling off at the cabins. The court kept no bail for the pastor and set the next date. A monitor sat over youth accounts. The board voted to copy ledgers weekly and let families review entries with the auditor. Riverbend banned locked cabins and off-site discipline. The annex tightened access logs. Naomi met the advocate and prepared a brief statement. She kept to facts and dates. No reach. On Sunday, the microphone stayed on from first song to last. After service, a parent asked to see entries for her child's group. The auditor made copies. At home, Lila did homework at the table. Marcus checked the porch light and the lock. Naomi folded the notice from the court and set it by the planner. Pages in order. Names on each line. They stayed together that night. The court called Naomi. She sat with an advocate near and kept to facts. She told the jury about the basement circle, the single page in her hand, and the words she used. No names. No yelling. The pastor said, "We'll pray." An usher signaled the booth. The room went quiet. She left with Marcus and Lila. At home, they set out breakfast for morning. Before dawn, men came. Pike drove the van. They took the phones. They used tape. They called it a cooling off. They locked them in a cabin room and said the pastor would handle mistakes by noon. Naomi showed the bracelet and her note from the ledger. She said she had asked for a copy. The DA showed the binder from cabin A and the SD card sleeve. The clips played without sound. The jurors watched the meters fall and the lens close. Naomi ended with a clear line. "We did not consent to be held. We asked to go home." The judge thanked her and excused the witness. The DA rested. The defense moved again to suppress the storage unit hall and the SD card. The court denied the motion. The defense called no new witnesses and argued church discipline and misunderstanding. The judge instructed the jury, "Look at paper, video, and sworn words." Bank records tied youth cash to the LLC and a private mortgage. Gate logs tied the route to the annex and Riverbend. The storage unit held church property, blankets, tape, and spare keys. Hale named the booth order. Pike gave the route and the blankets. Naomi's family sat together behind the rail. Outside the courtroom, policy notices stayed up. Cameras stay on. Vans log routes. No locked cabins. Ledgers duplicate weekly. Auditor copies open to families. The court set the next date. The judge kept protections in place. That night, Lila did homework at the table. Marcus checked the porch light. Naomi closed the planner. Pages in order. Names on each line. The case moved forward on paper. The jury received the exhibits. The binder from cabin A, the torn page from B, photos of the storage unit hall, gate logs for the annex and Riverbend, the SD card duplicate, bank summaries to Community Growth LLC, Hale's texts, and Pike's route sketch. The judge charged the elements in plain steps. The DA closed in the same order. Basement meeting, feed cut, van sign out, annex stop, locked cabins, storage unit, money trail. The defense argued discipline and consent. The jury asked for a readback of Naomi's last line and Hale's kill network text. The reporter read. The court replayed the loading door clip. The frame froze on a blanket taped over rear glass. The jury requested the bank summary with transfers highlighted. The admitted sheet went back. They kept notes. No one looked at the gallery. Naomi sat with an advocate. Marcus watched the monitor show missing weeks. Lila leaned on his shoulder. Outside, notices stayed up. Cameras on, vans logged, cabins open, ledgers copied. The judge held the room while the jury worked. The jury returned with verdicts. The pastor was guilty of unlawful restraint, kidnapping, tampering with records, theft by deception, and money laundering. Pike was guilty of unlawful restraint and tampering. His plea was accepted and cooperation noted. The court set sentencing for a later date, kept the pastor remanded, and ordered a monitor over youth funds with restitution to escrow. The judge thanked Naomi for a clear statement. The pastor kept his eyes down. The DA thanked Kenya for early preservation. The auditor posted open hours for families to review entries. Choir met with mics and recorder lights visible. Naomi walked out with Marcus and Lila. The street was quiet. The porch light held steady. At home, she set the bracelet in a dish, slid the planner into a drawer, and locked the door. The binder stayed sealed in evidence. Copies sat with the monitor. They were home. The rest would move on paper. A parent called to ask how to see entries. Naomi said, "With the auditor, in the open." Sentencing dates were posted. The court ordered restitution from seized LLC accounts into the youth escrow. An outside monitor kept the ledgers and posted hours for families to review entries. The church adopted permanent rules. Cameras stay on during meetings. Van routes are logged and public. Duplicate ledgers are delivered weekly to the monitor, and parents may request copies. Riverbend settled on a policy. No locked cabins, no outside discipline, guest phones permitted at all times. Hale kept his job on probation and mandatory training. The treasurer resigned and cooperated. Pike's cooperation would be considered at sentencing. The storage unit property was inventoried and secured. Naomi chose not to return to the church. She and Marcus found a smaller service across town and sat near an exit. Lila went back to choir with a counselor present. Kenya helped the auditor set a simple clinic night for parents: how to read entries, how to ask for copies, where to report concerns. The mic light stayed visible from start to finish. At home, routine returned in small pieces. Lila did homework at the table. Marcus checked the porch light and the door sensor. Naomi kept a single copy of her meeting page in a folder. The original stayed in evidence. The advocate called with next dates and offered a quiet route to court. The DA filed a notice that restitution would fund youth programs under the monitor. The board opened a public email for questions. The church page listed the new rules in plain lines: cameras on, routes logged, cabins open, ledgers copied, audits posted. On Sunday, the microphone stayed on, and the recorder light held steady. Naomi did not speak. She did not need to. The record now held the words she had tried to say in the basement. Something was wrong. Pages were in order. Names on each line. The family locked the door and slept. The case would go on paper. They would go on at home. The street stayed quiet. Sentencing filled the room without ceremony. Naomi sat with an advocate and chose a short line. "We asked to go home." The DA outlined the counts. The court imposed a prison term on the pastor, consecutive on the main acts, barred him from any charity role, and ordered restitution from the seized LLC accounts into a youth escrow. Pike received a reduced term for cooperation and a ban from handling funds. The judge kept the protective order, ordered no contact with the family, and set audits to publish in plain language. The storage unit hall and the SD card were marked for return after appeal. Alvarez filed a property release for Naomi's bracelet and Lila's folder. The auditor scheduled open nights for families to review entries with copies. Outside, policy notices stayed visible. Cameras on, routes logged, cabins open, ledgers copied. Naomi did not speak again. The record would carry it. Riverbend posted its new rules at the gate and cabin doors. The annex replaced locks and installed a camera over the keyboard. At home, small things held. Lila practiced with a counselor at rehearsal. Marcus checked the porch and the door sensor. Naomi met the advocate, set dates, and did not return to the old church. They found a smaller service across town and sat near an exit. Kenya helped the auditor host clinic nights for parents: how to read entries, how to request copies, where to report concerns. The city posted a single page for youth groups. Cameras stay on, vans log routes, cabins stay open, ledgers duplicate weekly, audits post online. Riverbend marked cabin locks with seals that cannot be set from outside. The annex kept a public key log and a live hall camera. Hale finished mandatory training and kept his job on probation. The treasurer resigned. Pike's cooperation would be weighed by the court. Alvarez closed her file with a clean chain of custody and signed the seal. Naomi's page stayed in evidence. Her copy sat in a folder at home. She had spoken once. The record now holds it. They went home. After sentencing, the town moved on small checks, not headlines. The monitor posted escrow deposits and a calendar for parents. At the annex, a red status light watched the keyboard. Riverbend hung a metal plate at every cabin. Locks may not be set from outside. The church kept a single page on its site. Cameras on, routes logged, cabins open, ledgers copied, audits posted. On Sunday, the microphone stayed on from first hymn to last. In the lobby, a table marked "Monitor Copy" held binders. Parents flipped to their child's line and left with a stamped page. At home, Lila practiced. Naomi met the advocate when dates came. Marcus checked the porch sensor. Kenya ran clinic nights and showed families how to ask for copies. Alvarez filed the final chain and closed the case number. Naomi kept her page in a folder. She had spoken once. Quiet, calm, but clear. She did not need to again. The record holds it now. Pages in order, names on each line. The rest will move on paper. They will go on at home. The street stays quiet.